Hello, hello to my True Blue crew. I am getting started a little bit early. I know 9 a.m. Pacific was the advertised time. Um, Hi, Donna. I'm glad to see you're up early with me, at least on the West Coast here. We've had an early day in my house. Everybody's up and off for their Saturday activities, so it's the perfect time to get started. And I had a lot of votes in my short video yesterday previewing the two blocks. And yes, I am going to show both blocks today. So everybody should be happy with the content, but it was a clear preference for the star block versus the split 9 patch. But we are going to start with the split 9 patch. I'm calling this block slider. Uh, as you slide down the ramp there on your split 9 patch block. Now, this block is part of the Little Bit Different Block of the Month program. And that is a series of rectangular blocks. So we're making 6x9 finished blocks in 2023, just stretching our skills a little bit and seeing what the differences are there when we change the dimensions of your quilt blocks a little bit. Now, all of those block patterns are free in 2023. So everybody has a chance to download and try out all of those blocks. I'm going to take a second to grab the link for you guys. I've got so much fun stuff to share today. That's why I am hopping on a little bit early. And it's taking me a minute because I didn't pre-do all this stuff, and that's not what I want. Let me go back out. TrueBlueQuilts.com. All the information is there. And here is the main page. Okay. There's the main page, truebluequilts.com/little-bit-different. But if you just go to the homepage of True Blue Quilts, you can find links to all of our block of the month patterns. Some of them are just descriptions on the blog because the piecing was really easy. So I didn't make a downloadable sheet. Everything else is listed there. And today we are working on the split 9 patch. So the great thing about a 6x9 quilt block is that you've got 3 sections of 3 inches. That's what those row heights are. And then the 6 inches divides into 2-inch. So if you cut 2.5-inch strips, you can get these scrappy blocks right there from 2.5-inch strips. You need oversized pieces to do half rectangle triangles. So those are cut a little bit bigger. And then I've got my special Little Bit Different ruler that you can also get from truebluequilts.com. And it has, let me see if I can get the angle right in the light. You can barely see that section there that's marked that has all the cutting lines for your half rectangle triangles. So very useful tool if you plan on making several of the blocks that have half rectangle triangles. Okay, so like I said, we start with oversized pieces, and your first step is going to be to cut your 2 colors. And you guys, I don't iron ahead of time. I dig in my scrap bin and I just cut up fabric. So I'm very sorry that this isn't, you get what you get on a Saturday morning here. But the 2 pieces, and then you cut them once on the diagonal. So I'm starting with those pieces, and then we're going to turn that over to sew on the diagonal. And all of these instructions are listed there on the blog showing you how. And you always look for those two mountain peaks. You don't want to sew with your triangles all lined up perfectly. You want to see those two mountain peaks when you're sewing half rectangle triangles. Okay, just like that. Now, if you are interested in a much more detailed experience learning how to sew half rectangle triangles and make some of these different blocks that have been featured this year, I am running a class at the end of the month on Zoom. So it will be a much clearer viewpoint than this YouTube live session where I just kind of show you what I'm doing and then go off and sew. So if you're interested in joining me for that Zoom class, that information is on my website also. It's called the Fast Track Modern Sampler Class. So Donna, we are sewing. So I've got my two triangles. I folded, they made the rectangle. Now I'm going to fold it over right sides together. And I'm going to sew on that long diagonal edge. I've got the corners matched up. I can see my two mountain peaks, and I'm going to sew on this side, just your normal quarter inch seam. So as I sit here and get started, I'm realizing it's very warm in this room. So I need to maneuver the camera for just a second so I can turn my ceiling fan on. Phoenix, Arizona. It's fall everywhere else. We're still over 100 degrees. So we definitely need our fans going in the house. So motion warning. If you need to look away for a few minutes, I'll let you know when I've got things settled. But I'm trying not to make this too jarring of a experience. So okay, and we're back. And you can see I am wearing my favorite It's My Mom's Fault t-shirt. And that was just a funny comment I made on my podcast a few weeks ago. And just everybody thought it was hysterical. And we all, we tend to have those family connections, whether it's an aunt or a grandma. In my case, my mom sparked my love of quilting, and here we are so many years later. So this is from the Quilting on the Side website. You can find t-shirts and things. Oh my goodness, Donna's up in Wisconsin looking forward to a frosty evening. Well, you enjoy that. We get like maybe one or two days in January or February that it gets down that cold, but I like to say with all the heat, it keeps the riffraff out. So it's got to be a little tough to survive the Arizona summers. Okay, so I did my pre-cutting for all my triangles, and you'll notice that you need 3 triangles for our split 9 patch. And so you'll need 2 rectangles. That will give you 4 triangles. So you'll have a bonus. So you just need to keep making blocks until it evens out. That's my only suggestion there. So I've got all mine cut, and I will start sewing those rectangles. And yeah, just ask questions. I'll try to hold things up. Hold things up to the camera, but yeah, this YouTube scenario isn't the best for teaching. It's great for hanging out and chatting. So I'm so glad you have joined me for our sit and sew. And immediately my machine comes unthreaded. Gotta love that. So I just start over from the beginning. And in case anybody's wondering, I use Aurifil for the orange spool 50 weight. Yeah. I mean, I'm not sewing with blue. I have a neutral thread, but it's the same brand. And this is a baby lock machine that luckily my very tolerant family, I took over the spare bedroom. Just keep the machine set up all the time, so I can come in here and just sit down and sew. There we go. And we've got to do some chain piecing here. So I will get several of my pieces done before I stop and let you know. Oh, Ginger is from Arizona. Tell me details. It's always fun to meet other desert dwellers there. Hi, Cindy. Good to see you. And yeah, and Ginger was here when we had our record 122. I don't think we quite reached 122 this summer, but we had that. I'm sure everybody remembers the news. We had that long stretch of 31 or 32 days where it was 115 or above. So, and Carol is joining us. Good to see you. I've just gotten started with my half rectangle triangles. I'm doing the split 9 patch first, and then we will get to the popular star block a little bit later. But along with doing the block of the month online, I share these blocks for my guild. It is our block lottery. So everybody last month made split 9 patches, and then we're going to have a drawing at the next meeting and someone will get to take them all home. So I need to make a few more for that donation pile. And Karen is joining us from Baltimore. Good to see you. Now, along with the blocks, I also am designing patterns that feature the single block for the month. And then at the end of the year, we'll talk about sampler versions. But the pattern for the split 9 patch blocks needs both right and left. So I'm doing a batch of triangles that have the uphill diagonal, and then I will switch and do some more with the downhill diagonal. Oh my goodness, Donna's been moving around the country from Florida to Texas and now in Wisconsin, enjoying the cool temperatures. So I don't have too much sympathy for you, Donna, as we are nearing the end of our long summer. We'll start being the envy of the world here as we get to our beautiful 70 and 80 degree days for the other half of the year. So yeah, I always feel bad for the people that move to Phoenix in, May and June, and their first experience is that massive heat. I stay inside. There were times that I went 2 or 3 days without leaving the house just because I didn't have to, and it was too hot to be outside doing anything. Okay. I'm getting to the end of this stack, and then I'll have a good selection. I love to chain piece, but I don't always have enough going on because I'm just trying to sew one block at a time when I'm on camera. So I've got my long strip of half rectangle triangles. And you got to have a little bucket or cup, you know, a plastic cup works just fine. I've got this fun little, it's like a vinyl bag, little collapsible bag, and it has these little pockets. So I keep a little lint brush, my seam ripper, and a screwdriver for my sewing machine, and then of course all the clips that you need. And it just is my thread catcher here by my sewing machine. So we've got our triangles sewn together on that diagonal, and now I'm going to press the seams open, and I am finger pressing. So I'm just running my fingernail along that seam. You want to press your seams open when you deal with half rectangle triangles, because you don't want that bulk there at that angle. It's, you know, a half rectangle or a half square triangle with that 45-degree angle, that gives you a little more room. The angles on a rectangle are smaller, so your bulk is going to make a lot of difference there. So definitely keep those seams open. And there we have our half rectangle triangle. Now I'm going to set some of these aside because I want a scrappy block, and I chose different greens and different light cream batik. So I'll give you a close-up there of those fabrics, because that's always the fun part, is show and tell. This one, let me see, it's probably not going to show up on my nice little cloth background. I'm like scrambling for what I can hold up there. It's like this cream with a very light tan, light brown swirlies there on that fabric. And then this one has little flower petals. So that one's really fun. So again, I'm using my Little Bit Different ruler, and I'm using that. Oh, there you can see the markings. I'm going to use that little special corner of the ruler that was printed with the exact angles and seam allowances that I need for these units. So I love my friends over at Off the Wall Quilt that made this specialty ruler for me. But the only place you can get this ruler is at truebluequilts.com. So let me quickly trim down my half rectangle triangles. I have a video on the channel that shows you the difference between cutting your rectangles with a normal ruler and using a specialty ruler. You know, I understand that quilting is an expensive hobby, and it really stinks to find patterns that require, you know, specialty tools. So I do understand if you want to just use what you have, but I save so much time being able to just look at the special marks on this ruler and go, rather than dig around for tape to mark off a different ruler that doesn't have the exact angle that I need, et cetera, et cetera. So saving some time, being a little more accurate, to me, that's worth it, worth the cost of that specialty ruler. So, and the other fun feature that I always like to point out from this ruler is that it has a no slip, and of course I need to rinse it off because it's been cutting a lot, but come on now. Don't make me a liar. It's sticky is the whole point of that. And of course, it's got performance anxiety. It doesn't want to grip, but it's just sticky enough that very light pressure holds it in place on your fabric and you're not slip sliding around. Vicky, hello, hello. Welcome, new member of our True Blue crew. This ruler is specifically designed for 2x3 half rectangle triangles. There is no ruler that's going to work for every size of half rectangle triangles, because if you vary the proportions of your length and your width of your rectangle, you're changing that corner angle. So as you know, so 2x3, 4x6, 6x9, and you can see I've got that main diagonal there. So any increment that maintains that 2:3 ratio will work with this ruler. Latifa Safir has a larger ruler that works with a couple different sizes. So if you think you will be using those other sizes, definitely investigate those other tools that are out there. So this one works with all of my little bit different patterns. So there's 12 blocks that work with this ruler. Yeah, Donna, the jelly rolls do work. They're not going to work for the half rectangle triangles. Like I said, you want those oversized pieces, and I'm generous with my cutting. You can see I've got, 1/4 inch or more around my oversized, just because you don't want to be short on those things. So now I've got my 3 uphill triangles all in green. And then when I cut scraps, I didn't have enough ready first, so we're going to go dark and not green. I was initially thinking I'd make a monochromatic block. It didn't work out this time. So we will just lay out our 9 patch. That's the other fun thing about this block, obviously, with the name Split 9 patch. So we're going to, let me figure out which way I'm going here. We're going to put our triangles all lined up there with darks on the same side and lights on the same side. And then we just fill in our spaces with our I'll go like the actual dark there. So there's the dark half of my block, and then I will come back with my other lights. So yeah, for these alternate spaces, you could really have fun with your 2.5 inch jelly roll scraps. So there is our 9 patch all laid out, and just sew your rows together like you did. Like you would sew a normal 9 patch block. And that is all there is to our split 9 patch. So I'm going to sew this one, and then we will dig into the other star that was the won the popularity contest on my last video post. I was previewing the blocks we were making, and so many people, it was overwhelming, the number of people that want to sew that 4X star. So yeah, I have a lot of fun with half rectangle triangles. but the math does get kind of tricky with those angles in there. So just play around with it. You can make your own templates if you're going to be using a certain size for a lot of designs. You know, quilt stores will sell template plastic that you can use. And as I said, Off the Wall Quilt that made my Little Bit Different ruler, they have a set of triangle templates called Angle Play. And I have designed a lot of half rectangle triangle patterns that use those various sizes. So rather than using a rectangle ruler with a diagonal printed on it, you just have a triangle piece of plastic that you cut around. So that is Angle Play. And if you search my channel, you'll see some demo videos of that as well. So I'm just sewing my rows together with 1/4 inch seams. And I don't use a lot of pins when I'm just sewing 2 small units together. When I get to longer rows where I need to match things up more accurately, I will get my when I sew rows together that need to match, then I will get my pins out. I was distracted because I was mentally thinking through how to press. So this triangle has plain units on both sides. When I say plain, I mean a piece of fabric with no seam, not a plain color, because I love the multicolor prints. So my seams want to go out. I always want to press away from the triangle. So on the top and the bottom row, I press in because that's a plain piece of fabric. And then the center row, I press out away from the triangle. And then my seams will nest when I put the whole 9 patch together. So I sent a newsletter out to my True Blue Quilts crew. So if you would like to be part of that, then sign up on my website. You'll see a big box on the right-hand side that says newsletter. But we were having an interesting discussion about being part of a guild. And luckily, while some people did let me know that they had negative experiences with guilds where, you know, people were cliquey and not very welcoming, those were the minority. So just that general reminder to, you know, welcome new people. New quilters especially need that encouragement that it's a lot of fun. And most of the time, you know, quilters are wonderful people, but human beings, being the flawed creatures that we are, we don't always behave our best. So I always just feel bad when I hear those stories that people had negative experiences at the Quilt Guild, because I have found, what, you know, it's just, there's some negative Nellies out there, and luckily They are few and far between in my experience. But so everybody's welcome at True Blue Quilts. Come in, sit down, hang out, sew a little bit. We'll have some fun. And I was speaking at a guild this week, and there was a adorable lady right in the front row, 101 years old, and she's still sewing and making great quilts. It was so fun to see. Okay, no. Leader ender. I get to the end of my chain piecing where I need the fabric that's under the needle, and then I'm scrambling for my little thread tab to be my leader ender. Sometimes I have other scrap blocks to just, piece in between. And that's what I did for my first split 9-patch block. I used half square triangles, and you can find that video back in the archives of my channel. But I just kept a bucket of half square triangles and a bucket of 2.5-inch squares, and I would just use those as leader enders. It probably took me 3 or 4 years to get enough blocks to make a whole quilt, but it was a lot of fun to have those blocks there and just, you get a bonus quilt in between all your other sewing when you have those leader ender quilts. Thanks to Bonnie Hunter, Scrap Quilting Queen. Okay, so you have to let me know, are you sewing along with these half rectangle triangles and the split 9-patch, or do you have some other project going on today? And it's okay if you're just watching and not sewing anything at all. We all need that brain break, especially after a long week. Okay, so that is the split 9-patch. I've got my rows sewn together. And there we go. So you can see that why you need right and left. If I turn this, obviously sideways, it's not going to fit. But if I turn this upside down, I start getting a diagonal row. So in order to make that turn the corner, we need some blocks with the opposite slant, the opposite diagonal. So, Donna's going to be sewing in the wintertime. And Vicky's going to start an embroidery project. That sounds like fun. So yeah, you could do a bunch of chevrons. You can do, just rows of half rectangle triangles. But yeah, there's no way to get that point unless you flip. And I'm showing you the back just so that you could see that you need the right and the left, the uphill and the downhill, as I refer to them, to make a point or a diamond shape. So check out, and that's actually the name of the pattern this month is Diamond, because I use these split 9-patch blocks to make a whole quilt. So have fun with the Little Bit Different block of the month. That is our first project, and there are a few adventurous souls out there that So Pam is here, getting ready to move. Oh, um, good luck with that. I know what a project. I grew up in an Air Force family and have moved many, many, many times. And that whole process is such a chore. Um, Donna's working on a panel. Yes, these half rectangle or split 9-patch. I forget what I'm talking about. The split 9-patch blocks would make a great border. And depending on how you wave the colors, it looks like a ribbon going around. That would be a fun way to put around a panel. Vicki, I'm confused about your comment about trees. So I must have missed a train of thought there. Yeah, I was just working with some friends to help them figure out different borders and things to put around panels. That's always a fun, creative exercise to embellish a panel. And Julie at Off the Wall Quilt, who I've mentioned several times today, she did some blocks with half rectangle triangles. It wasn't the split 9-patch, but she used the half rectangle triangle unit, and they were kind of set at a 90-degree angle. So let me grab some of these other blocks and see if I can give you a quick visual. But she put those all the way around a peacock panel, and it is stunning. She then turned it over to her daughter, who did a bunch of beadwork and crystals. Oh my gosh, it's a gorgeous quilt. Okay. I'm tracking now, Vicki. Thank you. Okay, so she put and obviously she had different dimensions. So you could, when you put the rectangles perpendicular to each other, turn the corner, then you can get these fun kind of V shapes going. And they're, like I said, they're a lot of fun to play with. And Vicki was saying that you could make trees out of your half rectangle triangles when you get the uphill and the downhill going. So gotcha. Yes. Yeah, we would have a nice tree there. Just put a little brown strip at the bottom for the trunk, and you have a Christmas tree. So, or any kind of green tree. I don't know why I said Christmas. Probably because I'm looking at this Christmas type holly berry pine cone fabric. So, okay, moving on from half rectangle triangles. Unless there's questions, we can always come back to that. But that was the October block for the Little Bit Different block of the month. And excuse my close-up view of my hair. I'm calling this now a jelly star. It was originally called a 4X star, was I think the pattern that I originally found. And I designed this or laid it out. I'm not the original designer. This is a classic block that's been around probably for 100 years. But we worked on this for Jelly Roll Day because all of these pieces, even the half square triangles, were cut from Jelly Roll strips. So 2.5-inch strips. And I've got a pattern sheet for this block. I don't have a full pattern. It doesn't walk you step by step, but if you can figure out from the cutting instructions and the diagram, then that idea sheet, it's called Jelly Roll Ideas if you go to truebluequilts.com. So like I said, we start with the star point and we make 4 identical units that have half square triangles and plain squares. And then we add the kind of sashing in there, and it's a 9 patch. So you've got star point, rectangle, star point, rectangle, square, rectangle, star point, rectangle, star point, and that makes your block. So, and the funny story, I was working on this with at an open sew day, and everybody fell in love with it. So now I have to have a class. So now I have another jelly roll that I have to get ready after I finish my teal and purple. So I cut up all my scraps. So let me show you some of the other blocks that I got done, and we will get this project organized and work on our jelly stars. So that one I went really scrappy because I ran out of purple long strips to cut the 4 rectangles. And this one, that really light background, and that light purple. Oops, excuse me again as stuff is falling on the floor. And then I've got, that one also had a little bit scrappy look in those border sashing pieces. There's another one. So this, Vicki, yes, you can sew the jelly roll block with me. That's what I'm working on next. I'll describe the process. Here's another one. So I don't buy jelly rolls very often. I just cut 2.5-inch strips because I love sewing with 2.5-inch strips. And so then if I've got leftovers, they all just go in a jelly roll bucket. So I've got, random 2.5-inch bits of fabric. They may be full strips. They may be fat quarter size length. They may just be small chunks. So that's why some of my blocks end up scrappy, because I was trying to get 4 complete rectangles out of each different purple fabric, but then I ran out. And I really, really liked this color scheme of teal and purple with yellow centers and light background. So I went really crazy. This is kind of a creamy gray. This is more of a tan. This is, tan, almost brown. This was a white tone on tone. So I just went really scrappy with my backgrounds. But that's generally how I like to do scrappy quilts. I don't very often just do completely random color schemes where you just, everything in the kitchen sink type colors. I like a controlled scrappy. I think of a color palette, I'll group colors together. So I totally enjoy rainbow quilts where you've got, but I tend to keep blocks a consistent color, like a red block, a blue, a green, rather than mixing all the colors in all the blocks, if that makes sense. So controlled scrappy is what I call that. And then here was another fun group of fabrics. And I've been quilting for, it still amazes me when I say it out loud. I've been quilting for almost 20 years now. And my mom owned a fabric store. That's why I wear the shirt. It's my mom's fault. So I've got a room full of fabric. So mix and match. I've got, the old stuff, and I've got new stuff as well. So I have already, I've cut all my pieces. So let me describe that process. 2.5-inch squares. That's easy. You need your light and your star point for that. I've got my yellow centers, 2.5-inch squares. I've got my 4.5-inch bricks. that I'm using for the rectangle unit. So those are all purple. And then I've got my half square triangles, and you can see that everything's cut and the fabrics are paired up. I lay my jelly roll strips down, teal and a white, and right sides together. And then I used the easy angle ruler, and I don't have it handy to show you, but my half square triangle video on the True Blue Quilt channel shows that ruler. It's a triangle ruler, and you just flip it across the strip as you cut. And so now I've got all my half square triangles that are ready to sew. And they're already grouped in color families, so I can sew that block. And I'm trying to look. These half square triangles have not been trimmed yet, so I need to set that aside because that's a different step, and figure out where I left off with all these fabrics. These were trimmed. Those will probably, we'll see as we get going. I love these 2-gallon Ziploc bags, freezer bags, for a cheap way to stay organized. I mean, I love the fancy vinyl, and fabric project bags, but the 2-gallon bags work just fine. Okay. So you can see I've got one star point already together. So let's get the rest of those star points done. The way I lay these out, I work in a 4-patch. So I lay my half square triangles down first, and I make those colored points kiss. They're touching there on opposite corners. And then I put in my background square and my star point color. So you want your star point color to touch the star point square. So we've got all our colors touching to form that star point, and we've got our background square in the corner. And I'm just going to sew that as a 4-patch. So get that set up and chain piece. So that's our first step there of the star block, and I will work on a couple of them at a time just so I make some progress here this morning. So I like to get all my block pieces set up right next to my machine, and then I can just grab and go. And I've got, let's see what happened here. Because I was running, like I said, I was running out of fabric. So in this block, I've got 2 different teals, but the same background. So just have to make sure that I'm keeping my star points consistent, I think is how I want to deal with those scrappy pieces. So it takes a minute to get organized, but then we can just sew. And I'm sure you guys have all heard that, of course, I talk to myself when I'm sewing. I need an expert opinion. So, as I mumble or over here, don't mind me. Vicki was asking about my little portable design board. This also comes from Off the Wall Quilt. I'm doing such a commercial for that shop, but they're good friends of mine. This is called Cheryl Ann's Design Wall, and it is a portable system that comes in several sizes. This is the small 18 by 24 size, and she goes all the way up to like a queen size quilt. It's a felt panel that's got, you know, pockets sewn on the edge, and then it comes with these plastic joiner frame pieces, so it snaps together. It's got some other pieces so I could set it down on a table, and just the way it's built, it doesn't want to stay exactly straight. That's why we've got that funky curve in there, but it works really well for my on-camera demos. Yeah, and I've seen Vicki saying that she made a design board, and I've seen the same thing where it's just either like flannel on some foam board or something, or even just a plain piece of cardboard that makes it a nice portable size for keeping your blocks organized. Okay, so I've got my 4 patches ready here, and I'm just going to chain piece these 2 blocks here. I don't know what is going on with my machine today. Go to sew and it is unthreaded again. And I tend to go through one whole stack. So I'm going to sew all of these half square triangles to the background square first. And I keep the half square triangle on the top layer as I sew. That way it doesn't get messed up in the feed dogs or anything. You know, the how sometimes it'll go down under the feed dogs and not want to advance through the machine. And the easy thing about sewing with half square triangles is that once you pair up the fabrics, so I took my pieces and I folded them right sides together, so I can see that I want my seam going downhill as I sew this edge. And so then I know all my other blocks need to be positioned the same way, and I don't really have to think about how things are lined up as long as I keep that seam going in the same direction as the piece before it. And I'm keeping all my stripes going the same way. That's one of the dangers of diagonal fabric in some of this, is that it, especially with half square triangles, it gets going all wonky. Oh, Donna has a great suggestion for a design wall. The dollar store tablecloth that has felt on the back, like the picnic outdoor tablecloths. Great idea, because you can just put the felt side up, use that as a design wall, take it down, fold it up. Yes, Donna, great suggestion. So then the bottom row, the background piece, the star point fabric is on the, I said background, it's the star point fabric, the plain fabric in the 4 patch is on the opposite side. So I just do a 180 rotation so that I can continue sewing with my half square triangle on the top as I feed it through the machine. So I am writing up a full pattern for a quilt with this block, and I'm trying to figure out how to word the shopping hints, because you need Carol is, I'm sorry, I get distracted by the chat as I talk, thinking about multiple things at once. You remember just a few minutes ago, my machine was unthreaded, and Carol says using a leader ender prevents that. And I agree, but I did use a leader ender and I still broke the thread. So I don't know what, gremlins. So anyway, choosing a jelly roll to do this type of project. I found, as I planned out the quilt and all the measurements, that you want to have 12 different colors, and this would make a small throw. If you have 12 distinct colors in the jelly roll, then you can get 12 blocks that have the 12 different star points, because usually, like, especially if you get those packs that are 2 strips of each color, so there's 20 colors, but you get 2 of each, then you have enough for 12 blocks, and the other 8 can make the sashing and cornerstone sections. So something to keep in mind when you are shopping. I'm just sewing my squares together to get started on the 4 patch. So as I said, we have our little star point quadrant is a 4 patch. Now, for my half square triangles and my 4 patch, I press to the dark. So I pressed this half square triangle to the teal, because that teal is darker than my background. And then I press to the plain square. So even though this background square is a little bit lighter, I'm going to press to that background square, because if I press to those plain squares, then my seams will nest in the 4 patch. And then, so I nest those seams. And then when I have my 4 patch together, I'm going to go ahead and press this seam open, just because that reduces the bulk, and it's, you can spin the seams if you want to, but then sometimes that means you're going against the half square triangle, and it doesn't always want to do that. So I just press that center seam open. So I've got some seams going to one side, and then I've got other seams that are pressed open. You may not like to do that, so it's one of those things we can agree to disagree. I'm just sharing how I do things, and you can choose to follow along or do something completely different. I'm cutting apart all of my, I really should. I've got one of these fancy thread cutters, and it's really cool because it's just a magnet there, and then the center is one of my used rotary blades that you can take this center screw out and put your blade in there, and then those magnets attach, and you just pop that guy into the base, and we just can snip our chain piecing stuff apart really easily. And I need to contact these people. This is on my list of things to do a little bit darker blue so that we have a true blue quilts thread cutter. I think that would be a lot of fun. Speaking of True Blue Crew merchandise, t-shirts. I've got this one from my podcast that says it's my mom's fault, but we were talking last month about some t-shirt designs, and I got those loaded up in my shop. So let me grab that link for you. So I need to order a couple of them so I can model. But we've got the one that says True Blue Crew. So that's just a t-shirt with the checkerboard logo on it. And then the other one, if you were here last time, if not, go back and watch that. I was showing off blocks, and I was like, oh, we finished 3 blocks. Well, that doesn't make a quilt, but you could make a table runner. So that's the other t-shirt. It says 3 blocks won't make a quilt, but they will make a table runner. So if you try some blocks and you really don't like them, just throw them together for a table runner, and then you've got something finished, and it's not gathering dust there in your closet. So enjoy, and I'm always open for other t-shirt ideas, or if we want to do mugs and tote bags and stuff, we can do that too. So I'm just finger pressing towards the plain square. Yes, Vicky, we want to make sure that all of our seams are flat. And that's honestly why I like finger pressing, because I can get right up there and you almost see the stitches when I press those blocks. And I do go back with an iron and press everything with an iron. It's just when I'm on camera, I do not get up and down to the iron across the room. So that is my strategy there. And yes, I'm a long armor as well. And it really stinks when you get puckers because someone didn't press their seams flat. And there's that little lip of fabric that you can barely notice with the naked eye, but that needle sure finds it quick. So I'm finger pressing all of these, and then because I am nesting seams, I will pin, even on just a little 4-patch block. Okay, so I have my 4-patch. I fold those right sides together, and then I can see my seams are nesting. So I pinch those close together, and then I drop a pin in right on top of those stitches. And I got it on the front and not on the back. So we will try that again. And then I double check on the front and the back that my pin is lined up exactly with my stitches. Now, we mentioned that these blocks, everything came from 2.5-inch strips. You can get jelly rolls. Uh, just consider the different colors in the jelly rolls and if there's enough of the color you want for the position in the quilt block, whether you want all of your star points to be, let's say all your star points were a blue and you had a jelly roll that had blue, green, and purple. Do you want to mix and have all three colors be the star points? Were you hoping to use one color for the star point and one point for the sashing rectangle? Um, just keep that in mind. And you may have to supplement with yardage and then just cut your own jelly rolls or 2.5-inch strips. We shouldn't call them jelly rolls unless you buy them from Moda. And then for some reason, that guy didn't want to get started. So that's where the leader ender chain piecing comes in handy because you can kind of tug on the, and I say tug, I'm not like yanking on it. I'm just gently guiding it to get it started because that half square triangle is right where the feed dogs are trying to catch. Yes, spinning your seams when you have 4 patches is wonderful. It just, sometimes when you have those half square triangles in the 4 patch, it doesn't spin and flatten out quite the same way that it would if the fabric didn't have that seam in there. So just try it and see if it gives you the results you want. But yes, I spin my seams whenever I can. So like I said, my machine didn't want to grab that starting point of the half square triangle if I was just trying to feed it under the presser foot. But if I lift the presser foot and put that fabric right up next to the needle, it feeds through much nicer. So just little sewing tips there. Okay, so we got that set. I'm starting to see people talk about all these, retreats and going to Houston for Quilt Festival, and it makes me really jealous. But I have, my daughter's going off to college next year, and so I'm trying to just save up those extra little bits to make sure that we can pay for everything next year without too much stress. So I will continue to dream longingly of quilt retreats and do my sewing here at home and on YouTube with all of you. So thanks for being here. did I say I was going to? So what I'm talking about, if I were going to spin this seam, okay, I'll pop that one open because you can always change your mind. And what that means is that you end up with a little forepatch of your seams there. And this seam is pressed towards that block. This seam is pressed towards this one. This seam goes that way, and this seam comes up. But as you can see, that creates a lot of bulk on those outer sections with those half square triangles. So I'm eliminating some of that because, you know, with those stitches there, it doesn't want to go the other way to the plain edge. So you could press just in one direction, choose which side, and then only one of your half square triangles would have that bulk. But if I press that open, then that just kind of distributes that evenly, and that block will lay flat. So I'm just finger pressing so that the fabric knows which way it's supposed to go until we get the whole block finished. All those sections there. Now, if you were really precise, you would probably want to square up your 4 patches. So these 4 patches should be 4.5 inches because I started with 2.5 inch squares. So 2 plus 2 is 4 in your 1/2 inch seam. So you can do that. I'm a lazy quilter. I don't square up. I'll square up the whole block at the end. And they were, let me hang on a second. Vicki was looking on the website. The Little Bit Different ruler is 6.5 by 9.5. So it will trim your 6 by 9 block of the month blocks, and all of the rectangles, the 3 whole number sizes, 2 by 3, 4 by 6, 6 by 9. Okay, so I've got my first set of star points. So I will put those up here on my design board. And I had 2 of that shade of teal, and then I'm having to mix in a little bit lighter. So I'm putting that on the corners, opposite corners, to make that scrappy block. And I'm just taking the top shade of purple here from that stack. And so we've got a fun swirly pattern there. And my top yellow fabric is just this kind of tone on tone print. So there's our next block. And if I set that right there, I don't have to juggle all my pieces as I turn. I get kind of crammed in the corner here because I've got my computer and the rest of my desk, and you know, my little sewing corner. So yeah, then I just sew it as a 9 patch. Get my 3 rows done. And for this step, I am always going to be pressing to the purple, and I will show you that when we get to that step. And how that will continue to lay flat for us, nest our seams. Pressing to the purple. Pressing to the purple. So you can see the purple is pressed in on the top row and pressed out on the middle row. So that's how we know it will lay flat, and it's just easy to remember to press to the purple. So funny connection here with this purple and teal block. I told you I am in Arizona, and our baseball team, the Diamondbacks, had purple and teal as their colors when they first formed the team in the late 90s. And gosh, they had that color scheme for a good 10, I want to say 10 years. And then they switched to red. And it's a beautiful, clay red color that looks great. And it does, red does have its connections with Arizona, the Red Rocks of Sedona. So that connection is there. But there are so many teams that wear red. It was so nice to be different, like I do with the block of the month, Little Bit Different. We were just, it was cool to have that purple and teal looking retro. So yeah, now they have the retro night. So this is my throwback quilt to the original colors of our baseball team. And speaking of baseball, we are in the playoffs, building up to the World Series. And we shut off our cable years ago, and I don't really miss it because I don't watch a lot of TV, but this time of year is when I miss it the most because we don't have ESPN. So my husband and I are figuring out which sports bar we want to go to watch the game tonight. They made it into the second round. So we're really hoping to have continue our winning streak here for Arizona baseball. Oh, I'm so sorry, Donna. I didn't realize that purple and teal are suicide awareness. So yes, we need to be very aware of the mental health struggles that people are going through. And my heart goes out to you for your loss. I'm very sorry to hear that. The one thing I have heard about suicide is that you can go ahead and talk to people that you think are struggling and ask them if they've had suicidal thoughts. You're not going to put ideas in their head unless they're already there. And if they tell you yes, then that can start the conversation to get help. It was very scary when my daughter came to me and said she had been having thoughts of hurting herself. So I'm very glad that she was open with me. And again, Donna, I'm not making light of your loss at all. That's a terrible tragedy. I'm sorry you're going through that. So we will get Donna's mind on those fun scrappy split 9 patch blocks. And I am laying out this next one, making an executive decision. This one was the next in the stack, but it's too dark, so I'm going to go with a lighter shade. Oh gosh, this is going to be a eye-popping quilt block because it's got the strong stripes in the background. I'll show it off here in a minute, but woo! And I said I was a lazy quilter, and this is where it becomes, I get in a little bit of trouble. If you can see that, my 4 patch is just a hair bigger all around than my, and I know these blocks were cut accurate, the purple shade. So I'm just gonna kind of center that purple in there. And like I said, I trim my blocks down at the end, so. That won't be a problem in the finished quilt, but it does throw me off just a touch. But if, like I said, if you center your fabric, you can deal with those little bits of human error and inconsistency. And I've also heard of people, if their blocks aren't lining up exactly right, they'll match up the inner, whichever inner side of the block, and then put all the variance, the unevenness, to the outside of the block, because that's generally what you're going to trim off anyway. So that's another strategy if things don't look like they're coming out exactly right. Okay, I've got lots of stuff here because I finished the 3 rows of the first colorway, and I'm working on the 3 rows of the second colorway. So when you are chain piecing, you get, okay, so here's another important thing. Don't just pick up your pieces and throw them together to sew. You need to make sure, I was about to sew that upside down because of the way it was laid on my design board. I want to turn that, make sure your star points are going the correct way in the row and you don't get some wonky designs there. Same thing here. So I don't want to sew my star points the wrong direction. I want to make sure they're all pointing, the plain squares in and the star points are pointing out. So get that lined up, and then I can sew those together. Okay, working on my chain piecing again, so I don't need to take anything out. Remember, I said I was pressing to the purple, so I need to finger press this towards the purple stripe. And same thing on my little spacer row. I'm going to press that to the purple. And then when I match those up, those center seams are going to nest. Now, it's where you need to think a minute before you press or before you pin. I want, if there's a strip that has more seams than the other side, I want those seams to be facing up. I want to see those seams go under the needle and make sure that they lay in the correct direction and don't get, that one bit flipped away. So even though this row is smaller than this row, I'm going to put that on the bottom because it only has those two seams. I've got all these half square triangle seams on the other part, and that's what I want to be looking at as I sew to make sure they lay flat under the needle. So I really try to explain my thought process if any of you are new quilters and want to know how to do things, just some little kind of unconscious habits that I do. So now those are pinned, the seams are nesting, and I'm going to start sewing. So when I start sewing this seam, this first seam is up as it goes under the needle. So I'm going to stop and make sure that that is flat partway into my sewing. So there is a lot of start and stop when you are sewing quilt rows together, just to make sure that that seam stays flat. So it's approaching the needle. I stop. It's hard to see on this camera. I'm sorry. We'll tilt that down a little bit. So I'm approaching that seam. I just stopped. I'm going to lift that fabric up and smooth the seam underneath so it all lays flat as I continue sewing my 1/4 inch. And then I can reach underneath and adjust the position a little bit and continue on to the next seam that is flat. Take the pin out. I'm stretching a little bit to make sure that those meet at the end, and then I will continue sewing over that last half square triangle. Okay, and then we have our next set of rows, and again I'm going to press to the purple. With that, press to the purple with my star points. Oh, that guy got really uneven. Debating what I need to do to make that guy. Well, I guess it'll be pretty straight, but so you can see there's that little bit that wasn't trimmed evenly that I'm debating how I wanted to handle that, but I think I will just, I could, lay it down and square it up before I sew it, but I've got a lot of stuff in the way, so we'll just eyeball that one. Seems like flat. I want to continue over that. Okay, I press to the purple, and then those seams will nest on the other side of my block, that third row of the 9 patch. One more. I got a little pucker there, so I'm going to have to be careful to stretch that a little bit when I get to the center. So I sew the intersection of the seams, and then I'm going to tug on that, both ends of that fabric, to keep it flat as we sew across that other seam, because it was just that center square was off a little bit and didn't want to lay completely flat. Okay. Ta-da! There is a scrappy version. The star points are scrappy. I've got several different batiks in there for that block. And I love this gray background. It has these little flecks of color that just, they go with everything, because these little specks are rainbow different. I mean, they have every color in these little specks. So it on a gray, and it kind of has like orange peel printed there. So it's just a really fun background. I used it as a backing on a quilt a few years ago. So there is one of our 4X stars. So I love making stars with this kind of quadrant layout. This is also the method that I use for making my Lazy Lemoyne star, which is an 8-point star, but it's got different colors in the star points. So you can find that video as well. But I sew my quadrants and then just pair the quadrants together. So you don't have to use this center rectangle if you don't want, but that's what we're doing for the 4X star. And this was all jelly rolls. So I had my pieces cut ahead of time, but that is a fun scrappy block. And let me get this stuff out of the way and see where my pieces and parts are for the next set of blocks, because we've got plenty of time this morning to continue sewing. So I've got my pile of trimmed half square triangles here. So I'm just laying out more star point blocks to start the process over. So I start chain piecing. I should do the top and then the bottom. So when I say that, so I've got my 4 patch here, and I consider the top of the star patch, the top of the star point, the row with the background, and the bottom is the row with the star fabric. And I have been sewing like all the top row, but I need to alternate so that when I chain piece, I can get the 2 parts of my square together. I was sitting here doing nothing and it came unthreaded. Crazy, crazy. I wonder if this, well, my machine probably needs to go in for a cleaning spa day. But I was also wondering if I need to put some thread conditioner on my thread because it's Arizona and it's hot and dry, 0% humidity. So maybe my thread's drying out and that's why I'm getting all these thread breaks. So several different things to consider there. Or maybe there's a burr on the needle and I need to switch the needle, but I'm not going to do that on camera. So we will just continue to rethread as necessary. So. Hopefully this is the correct layout. I've just got these rotated 90 degrees from the way I laid out the first one. So again, like I said, I talk to myself a lot. What's going on here? What did I do? Let me figure that out. Now, batiks. Especially with this mottled watercolor looking fabric, they say, and I believe most of the time, you cannot tell right side and wrong side on a batik because when they dye this fabric, it is a immersion process. They take the whole fabric and they plunge it into a vat of dye. And so it's, all sides in there. With a traditional fabric like these, when you look at the back, it's printed. The ink is only on one side of the fabric. They roll the fabric through like a printing press and they put the ink on one side, the dye, whatever. So 2 different processes. So that's why you can't, batiks are generally reversible. But what I am noticing with this watercolor fabric is that there is a slight variation in, so I can see the sub fabric, the original base fabric comes through a little bit on, quote, the wrong side. And it's like, I'm just deciding that is the wrong side of the fabric. And like this, what it is, it's the wax. So batiks are also printed, they'll put some wax in places to get that resist. And so the color is really dark on this side, but on this side it's like it's almost covered in white. And I think that's the fact that they peeled off the wax and there was no wax on that side, so it's looking, oh, don't mind me, I'm just rambling to myself. But I think that's why there's a variation in that. And if you really wanted to study your batiks and try to figure out a right side and a wrong side. The other slightly annoying fact about batik fabrics is they don't have the same kind of selvage edge as traditional fabrics. So it's kind of hard to see if you've already cut off your selvages when you're working with batiks, because they don't have that like obvious white strip or the little dot pinholes where the base fabric is held to the printing machine with traditional fabrics, other cotton quilting fabric, quilting cotton. So just passing along some of the tidbits of knowledge that I've picked up over the years about how fabric is manufactured. It's really fascinating. I would love to go to Indonesia, Bali, all those tropical places where batiks are manufactured. All those retirement travel plans that we have in mind. Although my husband is kind of a pessimist and he's like, oh, we'll never be able to retire. We don't have enough money. Plan ahead. We can make it work. And he doesn't really have any hobbies, so I don't know what he's going to do all day when he retires. Okay, so I finished that chain piecing exercise, which means that here is my wild block with that stripy background that I've got going in all different directions. Hopefully that doesn't make you too crazy to look at, but yeah, it's fun to have some variation there. So I've got the dark teal and the light purple, and then a lighter teal and a dark purple for those different blocks. I haven't decided. I may come back with a yellow sashing in between all the blocks, but that is for sure a plan for another day. This has just been a fun exercise to sew all these blocks together, and then I'll figure out a layout at the end. With our next set of star point quadrants, again finger pressing to the plain square when you have a square and a half square triangle. And like I said, I sewed these together so that I'd be ready to, like, I wouldn't have to wait for all the one half of the quadrant to be still under the machine. So let me recap what we have been doing. If people haven't been here, I don't know where to find all the resources. I have a website with a pattern shop. It's truebluequilts.com. So True Blue Quilts. And this jelly star made from jelly roll strips There is a pattern guide. It is not a specific pattern that details every step. It gives you basic cutting instructions and the block layout. Uh, and so it's priced less than a traditional pattern. So you can find that in the shop as Jelly Roll Ideas. That was our first block, our 4X star. We also worked on our split 9 patch. This is a free pattern this year. This is part of the Little Bit Different Block of the Month program. And you can get 12 individual block patterns for free at truebluequilts.com. And there's paid patterns that go along with all the block designs. So take a look, browse through the pattern shop, see if something catches your eye there. I would appreciate that support. Dawn is, I'm, going through those two trains of thought, and they're kind of colliding at the at the station as I read Donna's comment about men quilting. Yes, I've met Ricky Timms. John Flynn is another one. Juicy Juice is a popular name out there. Ron Appel. There's a YouTube channel for the Quilting Marine that is another male quilter. Yes, I know men quilt. And I have encouraged my husband. He's very mechanical. I want to get him working on my long arm so that, I can have fun piecing, but we can still be making money on the long arm. He just says that he's not creative, so he wouldn't be able to do it. So I'm thinking I need to tap into his mechanical skills and set him up as a machine serviceman. So there we could tag team a sewing business there. I could do the quilting and he could do the sewing machine repair, because he has been a service provider, for many years. He's very mechanically inclined. In fact, in the 1970s and 80s, he was a typewriter repair person before, that industry collapsed. So it's fun to watch old movies with him, because you'll hear the clack of a typewriter, and he can tell you the brand name of it just by looking at and the sound of it. It's pretty cool. So truebluequilts.com, pattern shop, free downloads for the Little Bit Different Block of the Month. I've got, if you're interested in a deeper dive for the half rectangle triangles, consider joining me for the Fast Track Modern Sampler class. Mouthful. That's coming up on October 28th, and that will be a Zoom class. So there will be interaction. You can show me what you're working on, and you'll get much more detailed look at how we construct those half rectangle triangles. So that class information is also on the True Blue Quilts website. One more little star point, and then I can put these rows together. And I was talking about the batik fabric. I use a lot of batiks. I love the saturated. Um, oh, Vicky was saying that she's working the day of the class at her local quilt store. Um, have loads and loads of fun. But so before I got distracted, I was talking about using a lot of batiks. I mix them with regular quilters cotton. It's you don't have to uh, isolate your batiks. They will mix into quilts with other cotton fabrics just fine. Good to see you, Donna. Have a great day. And remember, we're here the first Saturday of every month for Sit and Sew. So if I don't see you before then, we'll see you in another month for more sew and chat. Just we'll have the November block then, and uh, look forward to more sewing. And you can always reach out to me. Email info@truebluequilts.com is my email address. If you want to share pictures of the quilts that you're working on, I would love to see your work. So I'm going to make sure I've got my star points going the right direction. Okay, this is funny, you guys. I've got a funny little triangle clip on that. Fabric must have been folded when I was cutting my scraps, but that's just a funny little bobble on the edge of the fabric there. This one gets the other purple square. Okay, I'm going to get this block finished and then wrap up this live stream. I do have other chores to get done today, so I can't just hang out on my live stream all day. I try to spend a couple hours with you all, and we generally get those 3 blocks done. And I mentioned the t-shirt that says 3 blocks won't make a quilt, but they do make a table runner. So if you sit and sew with us and also get 3 blocks done, we can have our little True Blue Crew table runner party. And if I hurry up here and stop talking so much, I might get this finished. Yeah, I figured if you make these star blocks from a single jelly roll, as I said, you have enough fabric. It's one of those things, since I haven't sewn with a complete jelly roll, I just cut my own strips. It's a little bit harder to make those predictions, but you can make definitely a throw size quilt with the jelly roll and some additional yardage for the background and the sashing. But I had enough. I'm making 20 blocks, so my quilt is going to be more like a twin size. And I am so far behind in finishing my own quilts that I not only have a double-digit list of unfinished quilt tops that I've started blocks for and, done some of the piecing for, dozens of quilts started. I also have a huge pile of quilt tops that I have not had time to get on my long arm. That's the other reason that I want my husband to learn how to do this, or at least, if I can't do that in a few years, I want to get a computerized machine so that it could be running some edge-to-edge designs while I'm sewing the massive pile of UFOs. And they're all quilts that I still want to finish. I just haven't had the time. So I need to slow down and focus a bit on getting projects to the completed stage. And then I've been trying to keep my quilts in that throw to twin size range because I know a lot of charity organizations will take that size. Those are good to give to, lap quilts for seniors that may be in wheelchairs and just, they're sitting more so that lap size they can pull over themselves to when they're sitting in a chair versus a twin or a queen that they may want in bed. So that's my plan for my unfinished quilts. So let me get one more block started there as my leader ender project, and then one more seam for this last star block, and then we will go on about our day. Such a rich, almost brown, purple brown color. It's so gorgeous in person. Fabric just makes me happy. Love all the colors and patterns. So I am so happy that the True Blue crew showed up to sew with me today. Hopefully you got some inspiration and a fun little chance to sit and sew with us. I'm just figuring out the layout there for that leader ender square. Ta-da! There is that last block. Again, these were all batiks. I had kind of a floral print, and it's lighter bits. This one one dark square, all the other squares are kind of light print, and then that mottled green, and then that dark purple, almost brown color for that one. So a little bit calmer here than my crazy scrappy one. And like I said, 3 blocks don't make a quilt, but you could have a table runner. So that was our fun jelly roll pattern. I hope to see you back here next month for our November sit and sew, but have a wonderful month of October. And go visit me throughout the month on truebluequilts.com. Yes, this block is what I shared in the middle of September. So you can find this called Jelly Roll Ideas, is the pattern guide. It's not a fully written pattern, but it is a guide for this block that is on the website as well. And if you have any questions, Vicki, just reach out to me and we'll get things sorted. I'll hopefully point you in the right direction for all that. So I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend, and I will see you back here soon. Have a wonderful day.